Okay. So, a very good morning to all and welcome back to the third alumni talk. I feel you all have been eagerly waiting for the talk. I, Mrs. Harshida Patil, Assistant Professor, Department of Pharmacology, R.C. Patel Institute of Pharmaceutical Education and Research, that is RCPI per Shirpur, and alumna of the Pharmacy Practice Department 2020-21 batch. So, a very good morning to all and welcome back to the third alumni talk. I feel you all have been eagerly waiting for the talk. I, Mrs. Harshida Patil, Assistant Professor, Department of Pharmacology, R.C. Patel Institute of Pharmaceutical Education and Research, that is RCPI per Shirpur, and alumna of the Pharmacy Practice Department 2020-21 batch. So, a very good morning.
No sound. Hello. Patil sir. Hello.
Yes, extremely sorry for the interruptions. There was a technical error. So now we can start. As I said, you all have been eagerly waiting for this third alumni talk. I, Mrs. Harshida Patil, Assistant Professor, Department of Pharmacology, R.C. Patel Institute of Pharmaceutical Education and Research, RCPI per, and alumna of Pharmacy Practice Department, welcome you all. I feel deeply honored for the privilege of welcome you all again on behalf of Department of Pharmacology and Pharmacy Practice. I welcome all the dignitaries present for this event. I welcome our guest alumnus and resource person for today's Power Alumni Talk, Mr. Gaurav Kapila sir. I welcome respected Dr. Sia Patil sir, Head of Department of Pharmacology, and Dr. Mrs. S.D. Patil ma'am, Head of Pharmacy Practice Department, our respected Principal Sir, Dr. S.J. Surana Sir, all the faculty members, students, and all the participants who have joined us from across the globe. A very warm welcome to all of you present here for this third event of Alumni Talk, organized by Pharmacology and Pharmacy Practice Department of RCP-IPER. So, at the outset, I would like to give a brief about the goal and objectives of this Alumni Power Talk series. This series is designed to create a platform for continuous interaction between the alumni of RCP-IPER and students currently pursuing their PG degrees, to provide recent updates about job opportunities in the pharmaceutical sciences, to enlighten the students about development of skill set, making them employable, to provide glimpses about the interview techniques and corporate activities related to pharmacy career. And lastly, to invite input from the alumni as a stakeholder for overall development of the institute. I appreciate the idea of Alumni Power Talk series, which can create a special bonding between the past out students who have already established themselves in the big outside world. And I believe this Alumni Talk series is perfect platform for all of us to meet our peers, teachers, and revive the old contacts. Now, I request our respected principal sir to please give our participants the highlights about the institution. Please, sir.
Yes, Gaurav, welcome on behalf of this institute and the Shirpur English Society. You might be aware of that. You are the batch of 2007 and 9. I might be the fourth admitted batch in the pharmacology department. And at present, more than 20 batches are admitted and 18 batches are likely to be completed. Are you hearing? My voice
Yes,
is
sir.
Yes, sir.
yes.
Yes.
So more than 20 batches are admitted in the pharmacology department and similarly in the pharmacy practice departments. So since the establishment 1992, we completed around 31 years of this institute development and tremendous milestones we have been achieved in this history of this RCP. So in the pharmacology, especially in pharmacology department and pharmacy practice, we are developing the ultra modern laboratories for these practices, and number of developments related to for all the departments. Number of publications are there to the credit every year. Around 100 publications are there for in all for more than 80 faculties are working in these institutions, and number of patents they are filing every year. 5 to 10 patents are filed, and the books writing. So in all the way, the development of this institution from the research point of view and also the academic point of view, we got the autonomy from the UGC and changes in the syllabus, changes in the examination pattern. We are adding the first year batch likely to be completed in the autonomous batch. In the second year autonomous batch will be going on from this 1st July 2023. So number of developments, you are already aware of that. You are the alumni, and time to times number of achievements of this institution, the student achievement, faculty achievement, and the institution achievements are definitely you are aware of that. Instead of repetition of these different parameters, so that we can time to time already displayed, already discussed in the different locations, different platforms. So at the end of your discussion, we expect how we can start some medical devices courses in this autonomous batch. You can suggest by the end of your session, end of your talk. With this introduction, I welcome all of you. I welcome Gaurav, and I conclude my 2 minutes that were whatever the message from the RCPI. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving our participants and specially welcoming them. Thank you, sir. Now, we are proceeding with the today's Power Alumni Talk of Mr. Gaurav Kapila, sir. It is my pleasure and fortune to introduce you all a dynamic and scholar who have made us proud with his immense success in different fields of medical sciences and regulatory affairs. See, sir has an experience of over 12 years in medical devices and regulatory affairs. He is currently working as a functional partner in regulatory affairs in Roche Diagnostics, USA, which is Tucson in Arizona. He is a subject expert for regulatory strategy, filings of different US FDA documents, domestic as well as international dossiers for medical devices and handling different medical software and advanced instruments. Sir earlier worked as an associate in RA as a specialist in global regulatory, also a senior specialist in global regulatory affairs, a project manager in global RA in Abbott Desplaines IS. Sir has started as a specialist in regulatory affairs in Baxter Healthcare, Round Lake. Mr. Kapila has completed degree in Bachelor of Pharmacy from Amravati University. He has completed his Masters in Pharmacology from RCP IPAR, North Maharashtrian University. Then he secured his MS in Regulatory Affairs in Drugs, Biologics and Medical Devices from Northeastern University, Boston. Sir has received numerous awards and honors for his contribution to pharma industry, like Abbott Excellence Award in April 2021 for operating system change approval in Canada with a net savings to Abbott worth 60,000 USD. Now, Sir has also received award about Excellence Gold Award in May 2020 for successful launch of SARS-CoV-2 assays globally. He received numerous awards in Silver Award, Gold Award, and also Silver Award in the year Jan 2020, June 2019, and September 2019. So, you have a dynamic personality to talk with, and he is ready to share all the experience and the knowledge he has. So with this short introduction, I request Mr. Gaurav Kapila sir to please enlighten our participants and guide in the field of medical devices and RA. Please, sir.
Thank you, Surana sir, Patil sir, and Patil ma'am, and the entire management and faculty members. And thank you to the audience for sparing time to attend this webinar. And I'm very fortunate to deliver a webinar to educate some of the bright minds that are starting their career or who are already in the field. And it's a proud thing to see. We are getting awareness around medical devices in India these days. When I was a student long back in 2007, this field was evolving, but now it has progressed a lot. So I think this was a topic that suited to my field, as well as what's the current scenario from the job perspective, from the industry perspective in India, and globally as well. And this will be little different than the conventional pharmaceuticals labels, or we focus on the pharmaceutical products like chemistry side, biological side, much in the pharmaceuticals. But medical devices are something where we will focus on engineering. So please make this webinar little interactive. If you have any questions, I'm here. You can ask any questions that you may like to. And even after the seminar, you have my contact details right here. So you can send me the questions on anything that you want to know. So let's start. So the webinar is titled as Medical Device Design and Development, a Regulatory Perspective. And the idea of today's webinar is to introduce you all how the medical devices, they're designed and they're developed from the labs, from the proof of concepts to prototypes, and then what is done to design these and to launch them commercially, ensuring they are safe, ensuring they are effective, so that there is a little patient harm, and they offer much more significance in terms of the benefits to the health. So my webinar is divided into some high-level concepts. First is the overview, which talks about the significance and market scope of medical device industry globally. Then there are some key concepts or key terms that I will be using throughout this webinar. And those terms are also used tremendously in the medical device industry in day-to-day activities. So it's better to get familiarized with all these. Then there are important concepts on what are hazards, what is a risk, what is a safety. So I will be talking about some basic principles. Then we will start finally with the intent of this webinar, that is the design and development process. And then we will do a final recap. There are some career tips for the young, bright minds out there. And then there is a question session, and you are free to ask me the questions during that time. So let's say, what is the significance and global market scope of the medical devices? The significance is, in simple words, these are the life-changing medical technologies that allow millions of people to live longer, healthier, and more productive lives. The same kind of significance is for the pharmaceuticals. Both of the devices and pharmaceuticals, they promote health, well-being, longevity, and we solve the problems of identifying the diseases, treating the diseases. But the modes of action of devices and pharmaceutical products, or the drugs or biologics or vaccines, they are different. So they follow some different classifications and different terminology, different names. We divide the medical devices broadly into the following types as they are shown on my screen. So those are cardiovascular devices, which may contain of the cardiac pacemakers, stents, catheters, things like that. Diagnostic imaging, like MRI scans, those are the imaging techniques where you diagnose the disease looking at the scans or images of a tissue or or any bone, maybe like X-rays. Then in vitro diagnostics, we have seen during the COVID pandemic that PCR tests was a household term, and it's nothing but it's an in vitro diagnostic where you test the patient samples, you diagnose the diseases, and the patient is not involved, but the sample from the patient is involved. So it's an in vitro scientific term it uses. Then there are minimally invasive surgical devices. These are called MIS. Wound management, Band-Aids, things like that. Those are the wound management items. Diabetes care, glucometers, everybody is familiar with them. Ophthalmic devices are for the eye surgery related to your eyes, then dental, then nephrology, then general surgery. So if you can see through these types, the broad types that I have listed here, almost every organ system, it has a medical device associated with it. Now, why we need medical devices? Because there are reasons. There are many reasons. Sometimes the pharmaceutical product or the drug is unable to treat by itself a condition. So we will need a device to treat it or to mitigate it or to prevent that particular disease. Sometimes before even starting the drug therapy, we first need to get the proper diagnosis. So if you think about it, when you enter the physician's office or the doctor's office, the first thing he does is he takes out the stethoscope and a sphygmomanometer to measure your blood pressure. So those are nothing but those are the medical devices. So he monitors your vitals, then he makes some diagnosis. He may write you some tests like cholesterol, diabetes, or whatever. Those are in vitro reagent tests. And then he prescribes the drugs. So they have a very life-changing role as well. Now, these 16 subtypes or 9 or 10 subtypes that are there, the global market share is held by majority by the general surgical devices, which may be from a surgical knife, scalpel, to complex surgical robots. We will talk about them a lot. So this is just to give an pictorial representation, what kind of devices they offer a lot of scope and where we stand globally as of today. The figures may change in the coming years. Then talking in the financial terms, the global medical devices market size was valued around figure of 512 billion USD in 2022, and it is projected to grow up to 800 billion round figure by 2030, which is not a small but a significant growth rate, and it's a 60% growth rate. So you do not need to memorize any numbers here, but it just tells you what is the demand coming up in the industry. So if there is a demand, there are opportunities. If there are opportunities, there are jobs. So it opens a lot of career options for you to pursue in the coming years. Now we move on to the key terms, where the first term is what is a medical device, how you define it, and how it is different from the drug. Let's start with the simplified definition. Anything or something that is not a drug, but it is directly or indirectly used to diagnose, prevent, cure, treat, or mitigate a disease in human beings or animals, that is a medical device. Now let's say a Band-Aid. So is Band-Aid a medical device? Yes, it is a medical device because it acts as a barrier to prevent the infection to the wound. So it's serving a prevention to an injury, which is a medical state, and it's trying to help the body to heal without undergoing any infections. So it's a medical device. Now, Softwares, they can also be medical devices. For example, these days we hear a lot about the artificial algorithms, artificial intelligence. You might have read some news articles around the image analysis software, where some companies, they have developed some particular softwares, they have trained them, which is why they're called artificial intelligence. They can read the sliced tissue slides, and they can look into the tissue morphology, cell morphology, tissue morphology, and they can tell a physician that this cell, it looks like cancerous, so they are helping us in diagnosis. So those are also the medical devices. Now, what differentiates a medical device from a drug is a drug needs to get metabolized in the body. That's why we had those pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics, pharmacology, basically the pharmacological action for the drugs. And for the medical devices, you do not need them to eat or consume like the drugs. So they do not go under the pharmacological actions, but still they serve the functions of diagnosing, prevention, curation, or treating or mitigating a disease, right? Like you don't need to, a Band-Aid does not need to get metabolized when you apply it. But however, if you apply a cream or an antibiotic over your wound, it will still go into your blood, it will go to your liver, it will follow the kinetics and dynamics, and then it will, it will show its action. So that is the key difference between the devices and the drugs. So these are some common examples of the medical devices that we see in our lives every day, like cotton swabs. They're used to clean the ears, Band-Aids, toothbrush, pregnancy tests, sunglasses, dental floss, a wheelchair, X-ray machine, and catheter. So these are associated with some sort of the purpose to cure, prevent the disease, or treat it, or mitigate anything. But they do not necessarily undergo any pharmacological action. Then let's talk about the range of the complexity in the medical devices world. Now, you may have seen the operation theaters. So this is a typical operation theater, which is very state of the art. State of the art means whatever modern technologies we have to this point in the world, those are called as the state of the art. So you can see here, there are so many things. Let's start with this tray. This is a surgical tool tray where the scissors, needles, injectables, forceps, knives, they are there. And then there are these lights that will throw some light on the patient during the surgery so that the physicians or the operating nurses, they can see through clearly and they can perform a successful surgery. Then there are some other things like this ECG or the body vitals monitor that measures your heart rates, it measures your ECGs and blood pressure maybe. So what does it doing? It's collecting the signals from the body like heartbeat. It's converting them via software into a human readable interface so that you can read in numbers what kind of biological response is going on, and it's transmitting that information in a very productive way for the physicians and the operators. And then there are other tools and in here, like oxygen cylinder is there, these benches. So these are all different devices. They are put together as a system and they are coordinating with each other. So it's basically a system level concept. When you create a medical device, it can vary from very simple system to a very complex system. Different systems, they can interact with each other. So in this case, this is little complex than the Band-Aids, than the wheelchairs. Multiple systems are talking to each other and there are multiple users here working on one intended patient. And the outcome should be the successful surgery. Then let's talk about what are the advancements these days going on. So this is the upgraded operation theater now that we will see in the coming years, almost in a majority of the healthcare settings, where there are surgical robots. These are controlled by the softwares. And you can see in the left corner, operator is controlling, he's sitting, he's looking into the cameras of this instrument, and he's trying to control the surgical robot for a precise surgery with a very less risk to the patient. And there are some operators. So in this case, the hardware is acting via a software which is controlled by an operator, and it's performing a live operation, if it's performing a live surgery on a real subject. So you can see that we cannot launch any of these kind of medical devices that are harmful directly to be used on the patients. They have to go through certain tests, certain clinical trials, a lot of electrical safety testing, a lot of software testing before they can be released into the market. Just as we have the preclinical drug design, we have the pre-market medical device development. So there are some terms that are synonymous, but there is a little difference in medical devices. Now, all these things like robots, systems, they are nothing. They are engineered machines. They are engineered solutions to some specific problems. For example, during the COVID, when the COVID boom started, I was working with my ex-company, and our product line was PCR instrumentation. So we had a technology available, but there was no assay to diagnose the SARS-CoV-2 on a global scale. So we had to engineer and design the diagnostic kits, which happened in less than 3 weeks. So we were able to capture design and everything and launch the product. So there was a problem, there was a need that the global population is suffering from a disease, and we need to diagnose this disease appropriately so that we can start some therapies, or we can prevent the spread of this disease. So there was a problem, but the engineering was the solution. So engineering is nothing. It's a very dedicated scientific process to devise a system or a process or a component to solve a problem in a very controlled fashion. Controlled fashion means you design these experiments in a very controlled way. You write down the protocols, the plans. Those have to be approved, reviewed in a scientific manner, so that all the engineering, it ensures safety and performance when you want to design the product and you want to release the product into the market. If you release unsafe products without proper testing, then it can kill some patients. It can lead to very harmful events, and we do not want that. No healthcare authority, FDA, MHRA, Health Canada, TGA, nobody wants that. So it's an imperative need to engineer and design these solutions. And the key message I want to give is what are the key elements of the engineering design? They are: understand your problem, means what are you going to create, and what goal it is going to fulfill, how it is going to function. Then you specify your needs, which is the product requirements. We will talk about all of these in the coming slides. Once you specify your needs, then you start the product design. So you may have some scientific theories or proof of concepts, I call them, theoretical ideas that are used here before the design process, like between specify and design. You look for some research articles, or you have some proof of concepts, you create some small prototypes, and then formally you enter to the design phase. You lock the design, then you start the production level commercial development, and you validate and verify all those tests. After the safety and performance is ensured, then you launch the product. So this is the basic engineering process. Now, let's look at this figure. You can disregard the timeline here, days, weeks, months, or years. It depends on what kind of product are we building. So POC is the proof of concept. Now you have a problem. You first go with the theoretical or the scientific rationale. What solutions can we have? and how can these solutions or theoretical ideas, they can be translated into a working prototype to see if the initial feasibility or if the initial product design is workable or not. What are the risks associated with this design? You can get an early idea. So we need to design some early prototypes. Then once you finalize the prototypes, then you go with the first industrial subset of the final production unit. It's a bigger prototype, I will say. That's the pilot product. It is still not released into the population, but it has to be used in some controlled lab atmosphere with some limited users. So that is called pilot. And then you again evaluate the performance and safety from the lab towards the real simulated conditions that the product is expected to work as it is intended to be in the real field. Then you release it to the production. Then what are the design controls? This is a very common term in medical devices, design controls. Design controls means, let's say, if you want to make a consistent, safe and effective product that meets the intended use wherever it is used, and whoever uses it as the manufacturer intends to be, then you need to develop the product in a very controlled fashion, obeying the processes, the practices, the SOPs. So those are kind of the design controls. And why we need the design control? It's just to have a quality design. Nobody wants to launch a product with a bad quality. Now, quality in terms of the healthcare, it can mean anything from a minor injury to a serious injury or to death. So design controls are a way to control your designs effectively, the engineering cycle effectively, and to ensure a traceability, why we reached out to this prototype, what conditions we fulfilled, how we studied the risk. So everything is documented. If you don't document anything, it means it never happened. That's the industry terminology. And then next term is intended use. So intended use means what solution the medical devices provide or what problem it is trying to solve. Basically, when you translate the intended use in the scientific or the clinical terms, we ask this question, or we need to address this question, like what this ABC medical device, it will either treat or it is mitigating something, or it is curing something, or preventing or diagnosis. Okay, then what that something is, what condition is this? What disease is that? I mean, what will be the target population? What are the anatomical sites where it will be used? How long it will be used? And what is the mode of operation of device? It is battery operated, or it is manual, or semi-automated, or fully automated device, or it is used with some combination with other devices. Does it do any invasive functions like the surgery? Is it sterile or non-sterile? So this is the intended use of the device. And why intended use is important? Because it captures your very starting point. Like, what problem are you going to solve? What disease or treatment or prevention or diagnosis are you looking to have, via a device? For example, the PCR kits. PCR was a technology, a PCR kit, let's say XYZ. It is used to diagnose SARS-CoV-2 in XYZ patients aged from 18 to 36 years. And it has to be used under the laboratory conditions. So that is the intended use of the device. Now, the simplified definition of the intended use will be what the device is used for and the indications for use. That includes where, when, how it will be used, and who will be the user: a layperson, a doctor, a nurse, a trained lab professional, a physician. So you need to keep into account the intended use right when you start your design concepts, like in the proof of concept. This will derive whole of your testing, what kind of testing is needed, what kind of uh, design process is needed. If your device if your device is non-sterile, then you do not need to do a bioburden testing, for example. He-
Gaurav, you can continue, no problem. Please. Hello. Yeah,
Just,
Gaurav, you can continue. No problem.
all right, sir. Thank you. So the neuroform, this is a example of intended use. If we read it, it says a neuroform atlas stent system, which is a product name, is indicated for use with neurovascular embolization coils in the anterior circulation of neurovasculature for the endovascular treatment of patients. So it's a device that is treating endovascular ailment for the patients, and the site where it's going to act, it's mentioned here. What is the age group where it will be used? 18 years of age. And what are the conditions? Like the patient's neck should be greater than or equal to 4 millimeter. Um, uh, so all of these things, they are captured here. And this derived the entire design process for this product. Now, what is a system? How you define a system? So system means an integrated composite of components that provides function and capability to satisfy a stated need or objective. Now, this looks very confusing or maybe little complex definition because I borrowed it from the engineering book, but let me simplify this. Let's take an example of a car. A car is a system. It has wheels, it has engine, it has exhaust, it has parts. So all those parts and assemblies or the component parts, they work together and they give you a final finished system in which all these component parts, they're working together. They are working in a harmony to make the car go from point A to point B. So the intended purpose of the car will be, the car is supposed to, or it is intended to carry XYZ amount of the people from point A to point B. And we devise this system using engines, exhausts, tires, and assemblies, seats, steering wheels, whatever not. So that is a system. And all the systems, they have a structure. Structure means an architecture. Like let's simplify structure, function, and behavior. So structure means if you want to go with the house construction, you call an architect, and architecture gives you a blueprint or a structure, and then you start designing the house. In the same way, the systems, they have they are very organized assembly of various parts and components that work together, and all of them contribute together to a common function. And how the systems behave, we can control them. And these are the characteristics of the systems technically, right? The systems these days, they are complex. They are composed of hardware, software, and people. People, yes, they are also part of the system. It does not necessarily mean hardware and software. People, processes, we will see, they are also part of the system. And the system operates in, inside of the system, there is its internal environment. Externally, when it interfaces with the environment, it has its own interface, we call this. So let's take an example of a robot that is performing a surgery. So robot has some mechanical parts, it has a software part, and it has some motors or some screw bolts, everything. That is its internal environment, including the software. Now, external environment is the operators who use this robot, how they are controlling it via a computer or what. So that becomes an external environment for the robot too. So systems have internal and external interfaces. And let's talk about what is a system hierarchy, which in engineering terms is called a decomposition of the system. So we will break down the system from the top level to the bottom level to the part level. Now, let me go to the next slide first. So this is the system hierarchy. This is top level system, which is made up of subsystems like engine. Let's take the example of the car, like engine is a subsystem, exhaust is a subsystem, electrical parts, battery, that is a subsystem. So now how the engine is made, it is made of piston rings, it is made of pistons, those are the components. Then how are the pistons, piston rings are made? They are made of some screw bolts, some nut bolts, those are subcomponents. How the screw bolts are made, there may be washers or something, those are the parts. So system hierarchy gives you a full traceability up to the part level when you start from the top apex level of the system itself. And this kind of a breakdown is very important to understand, because system is what kind of medical device we are trying to create. And the question remains is from where we should start. Should we start from the part level? Should we start from the subcomponent level, component or subsystem? Now, this was the example that I took. A car is composed of subsystems. It has components, subcomponents. So system hierarchy, it helps you to understand the basic architecture, what you are going to create. And a lot of engineering people, safety people, like mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, software engineers, material compatibility engineers, chemical engineers, usability engineers, to name the key people. There are so many people, they are involved here just to lay down the system hierarchy. And we can study the component to component interfaces using the architecture, like where I'm going to fit the piston rings. Will it go to the engine? It will go to the wheel assembly or the electrical. So it tells you a very clear idea where these parts will be fit, how they will be fit together. And then we can also identify the most critical parts or components before we start to build the device. Now, what is critical in terms of medical devices? Critical means anything that has the potential to cause an irreversible injury or death or a severe harm to the patient when that component or part, it fails. So let's say the cars, you have a brakes in there. So if the brakes, they fail and you're running on a highway, and what will happen if your brakes fail? The component failed. So that brakes, they may lead you to a harmful situation where there could be an injury or even there could be a loss of life. So that brake system is a very critical component. So we can identify all these things using the system hierarchy and decomposition. And it's a very scientific way, as you can see, to outline how can we develop the devices, what parts will go where. This also tells how the systems, they will interact with the external environment. For example, again, taking the example of the car, how far the steering wheel should be placed from the car seat so that the user, the driver, can effectively control the vehicle. He can effectively navigate, make the turns, and how effectively far we can put the dashboard so that there is a less risk of harm. So those are kind of the things we can study with the system hierarchy. Now, summing up, systems are composed of people, facilities, data, technology, documents, and processes. They may consist of key elements like hardware, software, and some of the things are functional, which are performance-specific characteristics, like what are the dimensions of a nut bolt. Those are more important than the color of the nut bolt. So the color is the non-functional part. What purpose the nut bolt serves, it is a functional part. Then we talk about safety, performance, compliance, and reliability, which means how safe is the system is, how well it performs, how secure the system is, and does it comply to any set of regulation and laws. For example, the helmets have to be ISI marked. So let me leave it a question to the audience. If you have two helmets options available, one is ISI marked, one is not, then, and let's say if they are priced same, then what helmet will you prefer? Will you prefer an ISI Mark 1, which is compliant with the ISI standards, or will you pick up some random? So automatically you will pick up something that is compliant to some set of regulations or laws, because that ensures safety and performance. And then we will talk about the reliability, which means how well the systems can perform, how reliable they are. Do they cause any problems, or they work as intended for XYZ years? We have to define a time frame. What is the life of the system until how long it can perform well as it is intended? So this is the high level overview of the systems. Now, when we start to think about where should we start to create a system, it leaves an open questions. And it happens with every project, with every development project, whether it's a medical device, it's a robot, it's a software, whatever, or rockets or satellites, whatever. So you first need to define the user requirements, which is what problem you want to solve. Then you break down those requirements, or you translate them. We will discuss them in the coming slides, into some sort of measurable specifications. Then you start building the component models that meets those specifications. Then you start assembling small components or small modules or part assemblies all together to make the subsystems. Then finally, you integrate the entire system and let the system test as a whole, and you start, the system is fully operational at that point. Now, the important concept is, we talk about the drugs, the devices, they should be safe, they should be effective, but what is safety, what is a risk, and how it is defined in the engineering terms? Let's start with the word mishap. So mishap is an accident. Now everybody knows if a thing is unsafe, it can cause harm, it can lead to some accidents, right? And sometimes it's because of the poor design of the medical device or product, or sometimes it's the user who is not trained to use the surgical robot, let's say very precisely, and he does not use, and he makes some mistakes while performing a live surgery because he was not trained. So that is a huge error, and a mishap can happen. It can cause to serious injury, death, or maybe incorrect diagnosis in case of the diagnostic products. So these mishaps, they are not occurring from the will of God. They are happening because there are hazards, which we call simply as the risk factors, that contribute together under certain conditions. They contribute together to a sequence of events that leads to the accidents. Now, how it happens, let's say this is a electric pole and a cable. So you can see there are some conditions here to cause the harm, a death by electrocution. Hazards are always there before the harm to happen. So there is an electric wire carrying a voltage or current here. And then there is a person who is the subject of the mishap. And what happens is the hazards are there, but they are not doing anything at their own. If the person, for XYZ reasons, he can make a contact to the wires by touching it, or even by touching something like this, this crane, it touches the wire and the person was standing here, then the current flows here. So this is the sequence of events and it leads to mishap. So now just think, when we integrate a lot of components, sub-assemblies all together controlled by a software, and there are people who are operating it or who will operate it all together, how many hazardous components could be there? So we need to make sure at each component level that we answer the hazards, we hold the hazards, we try to mitigate all these hazards to ensure the safety, to enhance the safety profile overall of the system. Now, we all know that the petrol or the kerosene oil or any burning fuel, it can just catch fire. So fire is not a hazard. Fuel itself is a hazard. Under certain circumstances where there is a wire insulation is failed and there was a ignition, there was a spark, then there were fuel vapors, then there will be the start of the fire, and there is a sequence of events happening now. Then there is explosion, and it can cause injury or damage to property. So you can see how hazards, they lead to the harms. Harms are the outcomes, and hazards are the source. But there are some triggering mechanisms for these as well. So now, why we need to study all these? As I said, different components, they talk to each other. They're part of the system. So when they talk to each other, sometimes it becomes a hazardous situation. For example, the car carries the petrol as a fuel. It is not exploding or nothing is happening until there is a spark or something. So fuel is a part of the car system, and it is living inside the system. So it's a hazard. It is living inside the car, but under certain situations, it gets transitioned from a dormant state to active state that leads to mishap. So if we study this, this is also a scientific way to study where we should hit the process cycle. How can we stop the transition of a hazard to mishap? Right. So that's how we study the safety of the systems. Now, why we study safety, not the risk? Because a system can either be safe or either it can be unsafe. There is nothing like less safe or more safe. There is no reference point. It can either be safe or it can either be unsafe. So you cannot define the safety in terms of a measurable quantity like 101% safe, 0% safe. Either it's zero or either it may be 100%. But you can define the risk. You can calculate the probability of the hazardous situations that will transform to the harms. Like, what are the chances of fuel catching the fire? What are the chances of spark plug getting ignited without any energy source? So you can calculate those probabilities. And then what will be the severity of the outcome? Like how much damage these hazardous situations they can cause. Can it cause a minor injury or a major? So we have a risk scale, risk formulas, risk equations that the risk engineers, they work together to define a risk. And then they try to control the risk by changing the design of the product, improving the design so that the risk profile gets lowered and the safety gets enhanced. That is the overall idea. Now, why do the hazards exist? As I showed you the picture, like system is a composition of functions, operations, environment, subsystems, assemblies, etc., etc. So all of these things, they work together. And the hazardous assets, which means the things that are harmful, they live within the system. For example, you have the electric vehicles, electric cars these days. They work on, they don't have the petrol, but they have the lithium battery. Now, battery is a source of power. So that's an asset to the system. That's a part of the system. But what happens when the battery, it catches the fire? So there was a hazard associated to it. So what controls the safety engineers, or during the product development, the engineering team, they have taken to mitigate the risk of fire, the probability of catching the fire. That matters because it will reduce the chances of getting severe harm. So can't we just create a hazard-free system or a device? Absolutely no. Hazards will always live in the system. The aeroplane carries the passengers, but there is always a harm. There is always a hazard there. If it crashes, if it catches fire, something like that. But the benefits outweigh the risks here. Right, we have a very less probability of happening the accidents than successfully transporting the people from point A to point B. So that's the whole idea. Now, how you can consider the where the risks they can happen? The risks they can happen, or the hazards they can exist when you start designing the product, which means the pre-launch or pre-clinical phase, or I will say the pre-design or pre-market phase, we call lab phase, risks are always there. Then during the manufacturing of the product to the industrial scale, the risks are there. And even when you launch the product into the market, the risks are already there. So you might have heard that XYZ product has been recalled by FDA, or XYZ product has been recalled by a healthcare regulatory authority. Now, just think about it. If those products are recalled, then who approved those products at the first time? It was the same authority that determined the products are to be safe, but we may see some unseen events, unpredicted events that may not have gotten the eye of the reviewers or approvers or the healthcare authorities, triggering some harms in the field, and then it results to recall. So that's the post-market use. So risks are always there, and sometimes you can see the risks, sometimes you cannot see the risks. Those are called the unseen risks. So our risk analysis should be good. Then regulatory product development features, they will incorporate these basic elements. Like, we need to have safe, secure, effective system, which is achieved via using the design controls and an appropriate risk management. So this summarizes what I discussed in the previous slides. And we can see here, pre-market and post-market, we always need to ensure safety, security, and effectiveness. It's not like you launch the product and you are done. You have to keep monitoring through the surveillance, always, for any adverse event reports, for any mishaps in the field, and you need to address. That's the obligation on the manufacturers to make the devices safe day by day. Now, what is the quality? So quality means conformance to requirements realized through prevention and reduction of defects and non-conformances, which means make a quality product. Now, what is a quality product? That is free from any errors, that is free from any defects, that can perform as it is intended to be. So make the product right at the first time, so that you do not have to hear the medical device adverse events from the field, and then you have to reevaluate the design. You need to fix all those things. So that is technically a quality. And every manufacturer in the medical device world, they need to have a quality management system, which is a set of rules, internal processes and procedures, how those procedures and processes, they are followed during the design process, how these are implemented to ensure that the product functions safe, effective, and how it is intended to be. And there are very less risks, residual risks associated with that product. Now let's talk about the last definition here. It's what is regulatory affairs. So regulatory affairs is a profession or field of work that deals with interpreting policies, regulations, laws, legal things, and compliances governing regulated industries, healthcare, pharmaceutical, biotechnology, aviation, fertilizers, food, defense. So why these industries are regulated? Because regulations are enacted when the manufacturers or when the industry as a whole, they fail to regulate themselves. They fail to ensure the safety and efficacy. Now, you might have heard some potential 483 letters or recalls or warning letters to the companies where they were cheating with false documents. So that's how the regulations were there, that they should not do it, because else everybody will start cheating and the product will not be a compliant product, a safe product. So that is the core idea behind the regulations. Now, regulatory affairs, apart from the laws and regulations, we have a very important role to be an active stakeholder in the product development from the early proof of concept phase. We can tell what kind of laws and regulations the product has to comply with. For example, what kind of standards it needs to follow, like ISO standards, IEC, OECD. And based on those standards, you need to have your testing designed, your test methodologies designed, your clinical studies designed. without, if you don't do it, then the manufacturers, they don't generally get an approval nod from the healthcare regulators. So regulatory feedback is very important in throughout the product life cycle, and also in this product market surveillance, which is called the PMS, or sometimes a pharmacovigilance term is used in the drug world. Like if an adverse event happens and what we are supposed to do, how do we tackle it? And then the last and very important thing of regulatory affairs profession is you need to act as a liaison between your research teams. Scientists, they are not very familiar with the laws. So it's up to you. You need to research the laws and interpret those regulations in terms of what kind of studies do we need? What kind of data is needed? What is the biostat method it's needed? What will be the statistical power of the data that the regulators they want to see? How many patient samples are likely to be involved? What kind of sites are needed in the testing? And if we need a animal testing, then what kind of animal testing would it be? So we can research the early data, look into the regulations and feed it to our product development teams. And that's what the regulatory affairs is all about. Now start with the design and development process. So design and development process, it will start with what problem are you going to solve, what we are going to design. And it's captured in the intended use, what the product will do. A Band-Aid, its design and development will not be very vigorous as it will be for a robot, because Band-Aid has less risks. It is a simpler system. Robot is a complex system. It has more components. It has more interfaces, external, internal environments. Level of risk is different. So it all depends on the level of risk that is posed by the device and the intended use. Now, we deploy risk mitigation throughout the product development, which means we need to study the risks. As soon as you have an idea that you are going to start working on the project, you have a proof of concept, you do an early hazard analysis or the risk analysis to see what kind of the risks this product can have in the field, what kind of risks the product can have when the operators they use it, those are called the usability risks, and what could be the risks to the end users. And sometimes you also have to make a very wise calculation on when the product is not being in use, what risks it can pose to the area where it is kept. For example, an analyzer or an electronic machine, it can explode. Or if there is an earthquake, what can happen to this? Will it be stable or will it do some electromagnetic interference if we have circuits inside? So which means it's not in use, but still there are risks. Then what kind of design controls are we going to use? We will discuss those design controls just from the next slide. And then there is a design history file where you document everything that you do for the design, from the start to the final finished design, so that it becomes a blueprint for the production. You can refer to it, and then you can derive the production related procedures, processes, manufacturing information, design transfer. So let's roll with the next slide. So these are some key phases of the design and development. First thing is the design planning, where you have an idea, you have a clear picture, what your problem you are going to solve, what disease you are going to treat or diagnose or treat or mitigate or cure. Then all the stakeholders from various units like quality, regulatory, design, business, marketing, research, R&D, and customer support. Everybody sits together, they lay down a business plan. And then this formal process of the design controls, it starts. First thing is intended use. So intended use is the first thing. Then intended use is broken down into the next phase, which is called the design inputs. Design inputs, they are further broken down into the design process. So inputs are important for the design process or the development process to start. And design inputs are related to the intended use. So one subset here, it's a feed for the another one. They are all linked. One step has to be completed before the next starts. So one acts as a feed for the other. So once you start the design process, then you test whether your acceptance criteria has been met. After everything is met, then you have a prototype, which is a medical device here. And then you reconfirm here that it is the same device that you wanted to create, or you have created something different. It happens many times. I will show you in the next slides how it happens. And then finally, you transfer this design history file to some design transfer methods. You finally translate the lab version to the final production version, and the products are launched. So these are the major phases. So planning identifies the scope of the project. User needs, they define user needs or the requirements. Design inputs means what will be the product specifications. We will discuss them later. What are the design outputs? Like how you met the design outputs. That's the entire development goal. And you keep on verifying and validating all these things, then you launch the product in the market. Now, let's talk about the step one, that's user needs. So what you want the medical device to do? I want my medical device to measure the glucose in my blood sample. So now, if you think about it, there is an analyte, there is a glucose, and you need to create a system that binds to the glucose in your blood drop. So it's kind of a chemical reaction that is happening on a physical surface. And then when it binds, the glucometer will transform the signal into a readable screen in the form of numbers, human readable format. So that's what I want this device to do, where it will be used, when it will be used, what are the features, will it be battery operated, or will it be plugged to the AC power source, or it's manual? What kind of environment will it be used? Like, will it be used in the ambulance, or will it be used in the near patient, like at home, or will it be used only in the labs? Now, it matters a lot, because if your device can be used by a layperson, then you need to be very sure that you need to reduce the risk as much as low as you can, because laypersons, they are not familiar with the technology much. They are not familiar. They can cause some harm to them. So if the user is the lay user, if the user is the lab trained professional user, then you can leave some of the risks. And the level of training will be little less. The design, it will be different. So these are all the user needs, and these are based on the customer feedback or what market wants, what are the opportunities. Like COVID was an opportunity. So we knew a user need right now is to create a diagnostic kit. For example, I want to eat a good roti. That's voice from the market, and this is the user need. So you need to make a good roti. Now, what is good? Is this information fair enough to start the design? No, it's not. So we need to translate the user needs into a meaningful way. Those are called the design inputs. For example, I want a good roti, which means what is a good? We need to define it. It will be defined in the terms of size, softness, baking level, taste. And then we can break down those requirements into specifications, like what will be the flour to water ratio, what will be the thickness of the roti, what kind of flour will be used, what kind of the flour particle size or density, what will be the specific gravity of the oil, what kind of oil it will be, and what kind of tools are we using. So those things can be broken down from a general good roti to specifications. Those are the design inputs. When you translate something into a meaningful engineering way, and let's say I want a compact X-ray machine. That's the demand. Right? That's what I want to create. Now, an engineering person will ask, how compact you want? So you need to come up with some specifications, like I want, maybe that fits in my suitcase. Again, that's a very vague statement. So you need to come up with a specific length, breadth, and height, like 3 by 2 by 3. Again, writing this 3 by 2 by 3 is not accurate. So you need to add tolerances like 3 plus minus 0.1. That is your tolerance range, lower range and the upper range, because different measuring tools, they need to be calibrated. They have different measuring error rates. So we have to take into account the tolerances always. So here in design inputs, we translated the user needs into the meaningful engineering terms, those terms that can be measured and can be controlled. Now, after the design inputs, when you have the design inputs, you have everything here ready. What will be my acceptance criteria? My compact device should measure 3 by 2 by 3. So when you start designing it, after the inputs, it is called development. And when development ends, it's called the output, right? So how you justify your output, how you measure your output, that is very important. Those determine what kind of testing you have to do. Like if I want to say, my requirement was the road should be 7 meters wide. That's a design input, 7 meters or plus minus 0.2 inches wide. Then you write down a protocol right here. You write down a specification in the design input. What tools are you going to use? What methods are you going to use when you construct the road to measure the road thickness, to satisfy that you met the design inputs? Those things, those experiments, those outputs, when you run those input protocols, the reports of those, the data derived from those protocols, they become the output. Now you are looking at this protocol data, and you may have used some scale to measure 3 by 2 by 3. And you demonstrated that your rotis, you created like 50 rotis, they are all meeting the size requirements of 6 inches. So then you make a final drawing, the engineering drawing. So this is my final drawing. That is the design output. So design outputs are nothing. These are the outcomes of the development process that fulfills the design inputs, like protocols. When you execute them, the results and the reports, they become your design outputs. And these design outputs, they are used as a recipe for designing your final product. So we have so many requirements the engineers, they have to write based on subsystems, parts, components, how they interact with each other, what kind of softwares you are using. And finally, you have to integrate all these units all together. Then you have to make sure that you have a high-level system requirement that is met. And then the system is deemed as like it meets the user needs. Else subcomponents, they meet the design inputs, but they fail the initial system requirements. So that happens as well. Now, design verification and validation. What is a design verification? Design verification is a way where you by means of evidence or testing or inspections or running the protocols that we just talked about, you verify that your requirements have been fulfilled. So we started with user needs. We translated the user needs into the specifications. Then we wrote down some tests, what this product will go through in order to have these results acceptable. So we met those acceptance criteria, and all this process, how we met the acceptance criteria, that is the verification. What methods we use, what protocols we used, those are a part of verification. So we are trying here to say, did I make the product right? Which means if you failed to translate your specifications in a technical way appropriately, then you might have missed the product design concept already. So you might have created something else which is not what we wanted. So we need to make sure that did we create the roti, a good roti in a very specified, in a defined, controlled way, or how did we knead the flour? It has had to have some specifications, like what level of force should we put on the floor, what level of the water. So that is the whole idea. And did I use the same force? That is my design input. So if I used 5 newtons of force for 20 minutes, that was my design input. And I demonstrated by the testing, then it means that I verified that requirement. So same way, we have sub requirements that needs to be verified. And I can say that I'm making the product in a right way. Like when you cook the food, you keep on checking, you keep on adding salt, and then you keep on tasting until the salt reaches to your design, your user needs, which is swad anusar, we call it. So that is the design verification you are doing throughout this process. And when the food is ready, then you finally taste the food and you say, yes, this looks perfect. And this is what I wanted to eat. That is called design validation. Like, did I make the right product? Let's say if the user said, I wanted to eat dal, and he did not specify or you did not translate into the specifications what dal he wants. Do he want moong or he want masoor, right? You didn't pay attention. And then you followed the design specifications, you did everything, you cooked dal. And at the end, you followed your process inputs very rightly because you did not translate what dal he was supposed to eat. And at the end, user says, oh, no, I wanted the other dal. Then you failed the entire product development. You did not create the right product, although you made the product in a very right fashion based on your design specifications. But you failed initially to translate specifications in the engineering terms, so your product has failed ultimately. So these are very important concepts. Let's see visually once more. So you started with intended use. You broke down intended use into the design inputs, which is meaningful translations of the specifications in the engineer's understandable language. You write down protocols here, what testing will be needed, what are your specifications, acceptance criteria. Then you run the protocols here, you run the testing in the design phase. And finally, you verify everything here, that all of your acceptance criteria have been met via these tests. Those are called the design verification. So inputs are met. When all the design inputs or specification testing has been completed, then you have a prototype, which is a medical device. And then you take this device to revalidate overall with the intended use. That did I create the right roti, a good roti? Now this is good. You will take it to the customer. You will take it to the doctors or the end users. You will make them test this roti and you will ask them, is it good? So customer feedback is very important throughout this life cycle, like the doctors or the nurses or the physicians, or even the patients. And once they say it's fine, then you start the commercial design transfer from your design history file, which was, you captured all the design things here in the design history file. Then you start the mass production, like you are coming out of the lab and getting ready to go into the real world with more population, more users now. So you need to make sure that you are capable of producing a reliable, consistent, and accurate product that is safe and that is effective when it is produced in mass. So that's the overview of the D&D process. Now, we have talked about the risks, why they're important, we discussed. So this diagram explains where the risk analysis starts and where it ends. This is a quick recap. And from the very concept phase, we start with the hazard identification. Before even the hazard identification, we need to have some plans, like how we will address the risk management. Management means how you will identify the risks, what methods are you going to use, how are you going to score the risks, what are the options in the design that are you going to put to minimize the risk. For example, if you have a UV treatment waste chambers in your product, that can minimize some harmful biological waste, then what happens if there is a risk of accidental UAV exposure to the user? So you can put that on a user guide or a operations manual to warn the lab person who is using this that, hey, please stay away from this. So that is another risk control, how you can educate the user. He will stay away from this. Or the best thing is if you can make a design, some kind of shield that is UV resistant around this UV assembly. So even in case of a hazardous leak or accidental leak of the UV, you have mitigated that risk by practicing good design. And that's how we control the risks. Then you go with the final risk verification. After you deploy the control mechanisms, you need to verify that is your risk control really working, or all it is in theory, but you need to demonstrate it practically. So we have to again do some kind of verifications for the risks activities if you make some design changes. And finally, we study when we reach at the system level that what are the residual risks which cannot be reduced or mitigated beyond a certain point. Are they still there? And what is the overall benefit of using this medical device? If the medical device risk profile is very huge, then the benefits it's going to offer, then it is not approved, it is never launched in the market. The product is only launched when the benefits, they outweigh the risks, right? So that's how the risk and the development cycle, they play in harmony all together. And we already discussed about the design transfer. So this is a quick recap where we had user needs, then we had specifications, which is the design input. Here are the hardware specifications, the software specifications, and system specifications. Then these are broken down using the system hierarchy that we studied, the component, sub-assembly, all those levels. We break down these requirements into hardware requirements, software requirements. We break down further this architecture into the small units, small functional units. And finally, we test all these requirements in terms of verification, we verify them. Then we start integrating the hardware and the software and the people and the processes all together to yield the final integrated system. And then we will compare this integrated system to our initial user needs. This will be called validated system. And then the product is ready. So there are, I'm sorry, I'm taking a lot of time, but these are the last slides. So these are more important than what we learned on the design and development. So I want to introduce some of the career tips that I know. First of the thing is you need to, using the design principles that we learned, you need to define your goals or your user needs. Where in the profession you want to go? Where are you looking to go to join pharmaceutical industry or medical devices? So both of the industries, they are lucrative, they are good. It does not mean that if you don't have the experience, you cannot enter. There are so many entry-level roles. I can guide you through them if you want. You can reach out to me through LinkedIn or WhatsApp if you like. So you need to define your goals. What are your career options? You need to do some research. Then please use the social media in the right way. These days we have more information than actually what we need. I call it as a noise. Rather than watching Candy Crush games or things like that, Instagram, YouTube, other fancy stuff, there are so many lessons available on YouTube. There are consultants who offer free lessons. There are some FDA CDRH lessons. So CDRH is the division that regulates medical devices. And the links are embedded into these slides. So the blue ones, wherever you click, the references and the links, they are already embedded here. It will take you to this page directly. So you can do some free lessons here. Health Canada also offers some trainings in regulations. And you do not have to memorize laws and regulations. Just try to understand the logic. Why the government is trying to regulate, what is being regulated, and how can we bypass the regulations, what are the exceptions, but still we are compliant. So those are the things you need to have. Then about the job hunting, I see many people, they say create a LinkedIn profile, and that's the end. But that's not the end. What you will do, how your profile should look like. If you are entering a professional field, then make sure their profile looks professional. Do not share anything like political things like that, that people they share on Facebook, like cat videos, dog videos, and those are not needed here on LinkedIn. Make it professional. Search the LinkedIn using fields like HR, and then you can put the company name ABC, and then go to the people. There will be like people, content, options like that. So click on people. It will give you all the list of the HR people for that particular company that you are searching, and then try to make the connections with them. Try to introduce with them. Out of 50 connection requests, maybe 5 people will add you, 45 will not look back at your request. So don't mind. 5 is enough good score. Expand your network with these professionals. Try to look for some hiring managers using the same, using different keywords like hiring manager or regulatory affairs director, XYZ company. Expand your network. Then look for, search for the jobs online. Then try to look for the skills that are listed there. Try to look out for the requirements, and skim through like 10 or 15 job descriptions. Try to find the common words that are used for the same job. For example, if it says ISO 13485, like 10 job postings, they're telling you you should have ISO 13485, then this is a keyword that is running in the industry. So make sure you get some sort of training or some sort of idea of ISO 13485. And you can go to a Health Canada site or YouTube to learn about these keywords. Even if you don't have experience, there are so many free lessons. Once you have these keywords sorted out, try to incorporate these keywords on your resume. Rest of the stuff, like where you live, are you married or unmarried, that does not matter for the hiring company. All they want to know is, do you have the enough skills per their posting? So those are based on the key skills. Then these days, people are using the job portals or job applications, online processes. So there may be 2,000 applicants for just one single job. So HR person is not going to look through those 2,000 applications. They have very intelligent softwares that filter the resume. They will scan all the 2,000 resumes based on the keywords. More the number of highlights in our resume, more chances it will pass through that screening to the HR, right? So make sure you ditch the computer. You have enough keywords on your resume that computer okays your resume. Then you can land into the interview, and then you can present your skill set. Even if you don't have experience, you can still be confident enough to grab a job. At least it will give you some sort of confidence. Try to work on your communication skills. The best communication skill is if you look into the mirror and try to talk to yourself, like let's say in English, or whatever language or barriers you can see, or you can even record your voice in your cell phone, sitting alone and talking about yourself. Like, let's do this exercise. I will talk 5 minutes about me as I'm talking to the interviewer. So write down some questions like introduce yourself. So write down an introduction, and then try to speak to yourself, record your voice. And after everything is over, listen what you are saying. Ask the questions yourself, record the responses, and then listen. Then you will see where you are lacking the communication skills. That's what you are doing. You are validating, you're verifying your needs, right? You're trying to improve the system now. That's all the D&D principles technically. That will give you the feedback. You don't need a friend to tell you that you need to improve this and that. You can improve by yourself. It's up to you. Then stand in the front of the mirror. It may sound idiotic, but I used to do it. And try to explain about, let's say, not yourself, like a pen, like a salesman explains about a pen. Develop a capability to explain or say something for the pen for at least about 2 to 3 minutes. That's how you will develop all these skills, which are very important for grabbing the interview. Now, some key skills for RA roles are, as I said, it's about a legal laws thing. So it's sometimes it gets boring, but you do not memorize the laws and regulations. Just try to understand the logic. Attention to detail. Read the words very carefully. Listen. Develop a very good listening habit. Then develop a critic nature. This is very important in my field. Sometimes regulators, they ask us to do XYZ testing, enroll 500 patients, not 350. So you need to use a valid scientific arguments to push back. Try to find errors in research articles. Try to find the errors or mistakes in the material that you read. Try to challenge, whatever is there. That is very important. Then try to write the skills. Try to use the writing skills, like how you can tell a scientific story to a 5 years old kid. It's very hard for me to explain to my daughter what I do. Like I work with in vitro. She does not understand. But make a story, like patients, sick people, they come, then we take out their blood, and then we see in the big TV, and then they do. So those are kind of the things you need to have. Then rest of the stuff, decision-making skills, time management. Once you go in the industry, you will learn it, but it's very good if you can do some lessons on YouTube or Udemy or Coursera. Then you have to commit learning every day. Be disciplined, and don't forget computer skills are a must for 21st century. So these are the key things that I wanted to share. And questions, please. And thank you for listening me over.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for your experience and insightful talk. Your talk has motivated us and enlightened our students about medical device design and development as regulatory perspective. Now, the session is open for discussion, and if participants want to discuss any queries, please proceed by raising your hand or by unmuting yourself, please.
Dr. C.R. Patil, sir.
Yeah, man. Yes, sir, please.
So for medical devices, how we can start some of the certificate course or PG diploma like that?
Yeah, Gaurav, can you throw some light on this particular aspect? What should be the contents of
Yes.
certificate course, please?
Yeah, the first thing you need to ask why we need a certificate, right? Will it really help in your career? If you want the certificate to put it on your resume, then you can go for the RAPS certification. I can show you right here. So let's go in here. Can you see my script?
You suggest the structure and some of the part of the curriculum.
Okay, so there are courses at the CDRH, FDA. There are some certificates provided by Health Canada as well. Those are free. You can go and participate there. And then there are some professional certificates offered by this society, Regulatory Affairs Professional Society. So they have right here, like certification. You need certification in drugs or medical devices. Everything is there. And you can reach out to me offline if you want after this seminar. And I can help you with the certificate.
Gaurav, see, our interest is whether we can start a certificate course in our college, which will be enabling or equipping our students to properly at least land in that interviewer candidate's chair.
All right. Yeah, sorry for misunderstanding the questions. Yeah, so definitely it will help starting a course, because right now the medical device market after 2014 in India, it's growing huge, and we have a lot of companies like HCL is there, Tata is there. They all are looking to create their devices, but they are not finding the right candidates. So right now, the influx into the industry is coming from the engineers. Engineers are going into the regulatory affairs in India, which is very surprising to me. So let's send our pharmacy people there, because I think we can have a better grasp over the regulations, and it will really benefit.
So I will be in touch with you. No.
Definitely, sir.
Yeah, and we'll need your guidance if we are making a course, what should be the contents. Yeah. One more thing is that we are happy to share that Dr. Bala Prabhakar Madam has joined this particular session. And Madam, are you there? Can you please unmute and start your video? Dr. Bala Prabhakar Madam. I think she has left the meeting. Okay.
So there's a question: scope and career opportunities for pharmacy students in medical device sector, as it involves engineering aspects also.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And let me start with, I'm the living example in front of you. I don't have engineering degree, but I'm still here and learning the new things. There is a lot of opportunity. Medical device industry, let's say in the pharmaceutical industry, let's first start with that. You are doing B Pharm, then one person is doing Bachelor of Science. Still, you get the jobs in the same industry. Same is with the medical devices. If you have enough skills, if you have enough experience, there is no road barrier. There are no barriers. You can enter with the pharmacy degree like me. For the regulatory affairs, you technically don't need the engineers. They are the specification or the technical people. Like we have the people in drugs for R&D, those are scientists. So let's say engineers are scientists here. For regulations, we need people who can read and interpret the laws and regulations and guide those development people. So you can develop those skills. And pharmacy, I think it's a very brilliant degree one to have to enter this field. Definitely you can enter.
Okay, sir. Okay, so right now we have these questions. If participants, you want to ask further questions or anything, sir has already shared the contact details and also the LinkedIn profile. He is there. And so there's a question again. What is the scope of students from MBA HCM? If there are any scopes in this field.
What can somebody explain me what is MBA?
Yeah, see, it is management course, pharmaceutical management course. BPharm with MBA or MPharm with MBA.
Yeah, see, MBA is a management degree. It doesn't necessarily has to do anything with the regulations, but we discussed about the design process, like it's a full-blown project, right? So MBA can be used in managing that project. MBAs, we have a lot of MBAs that work together as the stakeholders. You can also enter into the marketing for medical devices, not the sales marketing. I mean, marketing teams here, they bring the market research data. What product should we develop? Where are the opportunities in the market? So that you translate into the user needs, and then the development cycle starts. So as an MBA, I will say you will get more, now technically speaking in financial terms, MBA, if you use those MBA degrees in project management or in financial roles like marketing intelligence roles, you will get more salary benefits than being in the regulatory affairs, because you are directly involved in the business commerce, right? However, if you are into the regulatory and you won't be able to use your MBA skills, which is the business skills, into the regulatory, because regulatory deals with the laws, regulations, and compliance things. But there is no barrier again for you to stop. Project management in regulatory, there are another rules. Those are called the project management roles in regulatory affairs. So you can lead those roles as well. You can be a leader of the regulatory people who are working on projects. So I also had served as a project manager in regulatory affairs. And those were the kind of the same skills I was using that MBA person has, like staffing, resourcing, costs, budgets, timeframes, implementation schedules. So you can do that.
So there's few questions from YouTube also, that are there any online free courses for this medical devices?
Yes, so there are courses, and let me share. FDA offers free courses Like here is the link. This is embedded link. There are so many lessons here. Then Health Canada has trainings, free trainings. So those are kind of the key agencies that offer free, trainings, which are themselves the regulators. Then there are consultants that teach for free. I can share the whole list. You reach out to me after the seminar and I can share you the list. What consultants you can follow on LinkedIn. They keep on having some video sessions. So you can sign in there and get yourself familiar with the medical devices.
Okay. So the last question actually, because as we have a time-bound session, so pharmacy students can enter the medical device sector as regulatory scientists, or are there any other department in medical device industry?
Yeah, to me, now different companies, they actually use different terminologies when they post the jobs. Some say it's a regulatory associate, some say it's a regulatory specialist level 1, some say it's senior specialist. So titles, they do not matter as of, when you are going to start your career, look for the entry level jobs and focus on what kind of experience is being asked. From 0 to 2 years, that is the entry level job. So you can start there. But as a regulatory scientist, if you have an opportunity, apply for this job. Even if it's an entry level application, just apply for it. Because if you don't apply, then how you will get the job, right? So there are chances with each application. Try to make as much applications as you can. Titles don't vary until the first 5 years in the industry. That's what I can tell you.
Okay.
You need to learn for the first 5 years. So focus on learning what we call as a seasoned professional. So make yourself more educated, more familiar for the first 5 years. Don't focus on the titles.
Right. Okay, sir. So thank you participants for this interacting sessions, and thank you, sir. Now I request Dr. Sia Patel, sir, to please share the concluding remarks about the talk. Please, sir.
Thanks a lot, Gaurav. Thanks for sparing time for your juniors and for us teachers, and also for providing such a great detailed account of the development of medical devices. It's late night at your end, and still at this awkward hour, we are bothering you. We are thankful for this very fruitful interaction with us. We're proud that you are our alumnus. We still remember the way you used to deliver your seminars during the PG classes. It's great to see that you have maintained the same enthusiasm in sharing the knowledge you today. In today's deliberation, you provided us with the overview of medical devices, and particularly the dimensions of the development of medical devices. These medical devices are the future of healthcare services. They are going to provide a great support to patients, physicians, scientists, and everyone who is associated with the healthcare services. That's the vastness of this field of medical devices. It is a very rapidly evolving field, and there is sure increased need of trained manpower in this particular area. In your today's talk, you started with basic definition of medical devices, and further detail regarding the concepts like safety and risk associated with medical devices, and how the concepts can affect the design of these medical devices. It was interesting to know that we need to consider even the safety of medical devices when they're not even in the use. Medical devices which are kept apart from the patient, kept aside from the patient. Even in those conditions, we need to consider about the safety and hazards associated with medical devices. This is something very interesting. And you also highlighted regarding the quality of the medical devices and how it is monitored. It was nice to hear from you the example of those good rotis, and you correlated all this criteria for a good roti with the criteria for medical devices. It was very, very funny, and we enjoyed it, the way you explained how we can correlate this simple understanding about our day-to-day activities with the medical devices. It was really great to listen to these things from you. These concepts, even though they appear very simple, but they are creating a huge confusion while classification of the medical devices, particularly related to safety of medical devices. This classification is still complex, and across the globe, there are various ways in which they are being classified and they are being regulated. So, the clear understanding of this particular classification knowledge is really important. And everywhere in this now, everywhere throughout the life cycle of this medical devices, there is need of trained people. there is a need of particular skill sets. And it's very good that at the end of your talk, you discuss regarding the kind of things our students should do to land in a proper job. Now, medical devices is a multidisciplinary field. We cannot say that it is only related to pharmacy or only related to engineering, only related to regulatory or only related to software development. Nothing like that is there. We need to get introduced to all these aspects to some extent and try to become a well-versed person in one of these aspects. Like in medical devices, we need understanding of chemistry because we are looking at some biological signals. We need understanding of physics because we want to sense that signal. We need little understanding of software algorithms, what the algorithms really are doing to the data which is being processed through this particular medical devices. Not only this, but we also need knowledge about the pathophysiology of the disease, the risk associated with each disease phase. Even this is needed. Okay, so like this field of medical devices, software of medical devices, these are providing a great opportunity to people who are ready to develop skill sets. Okay, so that is what I think is the main gist of your talk today. And I feel that our students have got encouraged through the way you presented it and the stature at which you are reached today. Okay, after passing through pharmacology, you've done a great work of going through multiple courses. You have bagged many awards, many accolades to your credit are there. And this is really the way in which we can project you as a role model for our current batch students. Okay. Thanks a lot for providing all these details. And in future, again, as far as medical devices are concerned, we're going to be in touch with you, not only for development of the certificate course, but also for a continued training, continued discussions for our students, so that this one avenue will be open for them as a career option. Thanks a lot for everything that you have done in this particular lecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the kind words. I will try my best.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, for this valuable remark. I again request Dr. C.R. Patel, sir, to offer a virtual certificate to Mr. Gaurav Kapila, sir, as a token of appreciation.
Yeah. Gaurav, please accept your appreciation certificate in virtual mode. And when you visit India, we will be inviting you to our institute again, so that we can hand over this certificate to you in person.
Thank you so much. I feel glad to see that the institute and the teachers who taught me, I'm still receiving the awards from them. It's a very great moment for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Gaurav. Thanks a lot.
Now, I request Ms. Seema Jogal ma'am, the coordinator of the program, to please extend her views and conclude the program with a vote of thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. First of all, good morning, everyone. It gives me immense pleasure to express vote of thanks of this program. Dear participants, here we come to an end of this third lecture of the series of Alumni Power Talk webinar organized by Department of Pharmacology and Pharmacy Practice, R.C. Patel Institute of Pharmaceutical Education and Research, Shirpur. The topic of today's webinar is medical devices, design and development, and it is well explained by our today's alumnus, Mr. Gaurav Kapila, sir. I would like to thank Gaurav, sir, for accepting our invitation and express my sincere gratitude to Gaurav, sir, for sharing his time, knowledge, and expertise with us. I express my gratitude to management, our principal, sir, respected principal, sir, Dr. S.J. Surana, sir, for his presence, his support, and also thankful for allowing us to conduct this webinar series. I am also thankful to the convener of this program, Dr. C.R. Patil, sir, for helping and guiding us to conduct this webinar successfully. Last but not least, I'm also thankful to all the participants and delegates, and have a good day. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Jogal ma'am, for the vote of thanks. I request all the participants to please switch on their camera so that we could take a photograph of this whole session. So now, with the permission of the dignitaries, I declare that the program is over. Stay tuned with us for the next alumni series. See you next. See you also in the next event. Till then, have a great day and take care. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Gaurav. We will meet again.